Let's be honest, when people talk about rock's golden era, 1974 rarely gets a mention. It's set between the trippy highs of the late 60s, the blues-heavy early 70s, and the punk revolution on the horizon. But don't be fooled. Underneath the mainstream, 1974 quietly churned odd storylines, debut acts that would later be huge, and moments that now prompt double takes. It truly felt like a year where endings and beginnings coexisted, rock holding on to psychedelia while leaning into tighter, harder sounds. Let's take a look. New faces, big futures. You might not have recognized names like Rush, Kiss, Kansas, Bad Company, or Judas Priest yet, but by 1980, they were arena fixtures. But by the end of the decade, you knew them like your own drinking buddies. Rush dropped their self-titled debut in March, a raw Zeppelin-ish affair before Neil Peart jumped in with his brainy lyrics. Kiss showed up in February, all grease paint and fireballs, ready to scare your parents and melt your speakers. Kansas introduced their violin-powered prog rock to the Midwest in March. Bad Company, the love child of Free and Mott the Hoople alums, roared in by May. And in September, Judas Priest put out Rock-a-Rolla, a modest beginning for a band that would help define heavy metal. Genesis released The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, a sprawling double LP narrative centered on Rael, a street kid whose journey pushed the band's storytelling into surreal prog territory. Peter Gabriel would soon leave the band, but not before one final blast of surrealism. Point is, 1974 was quietly planting the seeds for the rest of the decade. Prog, metal, and stadium rock were all putting their boots on. Mainstream gets weird. Eric Clapton, a guitarist rooted in blues, scored his first U.S. #1 in 1974 with a reggae cover of Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff. Sheriff John Brown always hated me. That cover, originally by Bob Marley, hit the top of the U.S. charts in #9 in the U.K. Clapton's version exposed Bob Marley's songwriting to a huge new audience, helping reggae cross over into mainstream rock charts. But I swear it wasn't self-defense. Meanwhile, the charts were full of oddities. Carl Douglas's Kung Fu Fighting was inexplicably massive. Ringo Starr hit #1 with the song You're 16. It may have felt like pop was slowly engulfing rock, but rock's intensity proved durable. You're 16, so beautiful. Still, rock wasn't going anywhere. Singles like Queen's Killer Queen and Lynyrd Skynyrd's Sweet Home Alabama proved rock still had a bite. The album charts were ruled by the likes of Aerosmith, Deep Purple, and Led Zeppelin, who just launched their own label, Swan Song Records. By 1974, Led Zeppelin had their own label, Swan Song Records, showing they were more than just a band. They were a major force shaping rock's future. The bubble bath heard round the world. Let's dive into some genuine rock theater, 1974 style. In July, the Rolling Stones released It's Only Rock and Roll, But I Like It. The video? The band dressed as sailors played inside a tent that slowly filled with bubbles. Keith Richards later joked that poor Charlie Watts almost drowned because no one noticed he was sitting down. Even the Stones were leaning into spectacle, airborne bubbles and all. Queen began breaking into North America in 1974, playing a handful of smaller shows and soon opening for established acts like Mott the Hoople. Humble beginnings considering they'd release Sheer Heart Attack by November and set the stage for A Night at the Opera. And on November 28, New York saw something magical and rare. John Lennon joined Elton John on stage at Madison Square Garden. They did 3 songs together, including Whatever Gets You Through the Night. If you were there, you probably still talk about it to your grandkids. Concept albums, costume changes, and canine confusion. It was also the year art got undeniably unusual. Case in point, David Bowie's Diamond Dogs, released in May. On the cover, Bowie as a half-man, half-dog creature with Ziggy Stardust hair and 2 sideshow mutts in tow. It felt part glam obsession, part carnival freak show, and it left its mark. Genesis, meanwhile, were deep into concept album territory with Lamb, recorded at Headley Grange. Yes, the same country house where Zepp did physical graffiti. With Peter Gabriel in costume every night, the tour became a prog rock opera on acid. Deep Purple also turned a new page, swapping singers and releasing Burn in February. With David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes on board, the band leaned into a soulful, gospel-tinged rock that refreshed their sound. From Southern swag to Fleetwood fate. Across the Atlantic, both Queen and Genesis were dominating Europe and just starting to prick the surface of the US market. Genesis would soon launch a 102-date tour to promote Lamb. Meanwhile, Queen's bohemian image was already becoming iconic, soon to be immortalized in a certain operatic music video. And as the years drew to a close, in December 1974, 2 relatively unknown Californians, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, officially joined Fleetwood Mac. That small change would light the fuse for rumors just a couple years later. Oh, and Mick Taylor left the Stones that same month. 1 guitarist leaves, 2 arrive. Rock's eternal balancing act. So, what the hell happened in 1974? Here's the thing, 1974 was confusing. It wasn't the Summer of Love, it wasn't Woodstock, it wasn't punk's Big Bang, but it was everything else. It was Clapton doing reggae, the Stones doing bubble baths, Lennon doing One Last Curtain Call. It was the year the future rock gods arrived quietly, and the old ones got a bit weird. Some saw 1974 as a low point in rock, but maybe that's exactly why it demands attention today. It felt awkward and experimental, a transition that no single genre could claim. But for those of us who were there, or wish we had been, it's a year worth revisiting. 1974 didn't just keep rock breathing, it leaned hard into the strange. Maybe that's exactly where its magic lies.